Welcome back, everybody. I read 13 books in the month of July, and we're going to go through all of them from worst to best. I read 13 books this month across 6 different genres. We had 3 mystery thrillers, 2 romance, 2 sci-fi, 1 dystopian sort of book. It was kind of hard to classify this one. 2 historical fiction and 3 fantasy. Of the 13 books that I read this month, I had 1 2-star, 3 3-stars, 1 3.5 star, 5 4-stars, 1 4.5 star, and 2 5-star reads. All of the books that I read this month were adult, and I read 6 of them on Audible, 2 on Libby, 2 on Spotify, 1 on Everand, 1 on Kindle Unlimited, and 1 that I owned a physical copy of. 10 of the books that I read this month were audiobooks. I had 1 immersive read where I did the audio and physical at the same time, 1 ebook, and 1 physical book. Now let's get into it. By far the worst book that I read this month was With a Vengeance by Riley Sager. I was so disappointed by this. I really wanted to love it, but my heart just wasn't in it. This one has a 3.42 average Goodreads rating, and I gave it a 2 stars. This is a mystery thriller about a woman who lures everybody that's responsible for the downfall of her family onto a train to confront them for their wrongdoings. Of course, everybody starts to drop dead one by one, and we are left with this whodunit detective style mystery thriller, which is not usually my vibe when it comes to mystery thrillers. I definitely prefer like a more psychological mystery thriller. So I can't 100% blame Riley Sager for my disliking of this book. I did decide to go ahead and give it a try just because I have enjoyed Riley Sager in the past, but I do think that this is going to be the last book that I read by Riley Sager. The last few of the books that he's released have just been really disappointing to me, and I'm finding that I'd rather spend my time reading books that I know I'll enjoy than books that I know I probably won't. I'm sad to say that I also did not really enjoy The Alice Network by Kate Quinn. This is a historical fiction book, and I usually love historical fiction. I think the main issue here was that I was just not in the right mood for this when I read it. This one had a 4.32 average on Goodreads, so most people definitely enjoy this book. I think this is Kate Quinn's most popular work. I unfortunately ended up giving this book a 3 stars, and it was a very low 3 stars at that. This follows 2 women, one during World War I who's serving as a spy in the Alice Network, and the other in the aftermath of World War I who is trying to track down her missing cousin. Honestly, this book had a very interesting concept and pretty good execution. Again, I think the issue here was that I was just really not in the mood for this when I read it. I think I'm just kind of phasing out of my war-based historical fiction era. Now I'm more interested in reading historical fiction that takes place in other countries. I think I would probably still recommend this though if you do enjoy a good historical fiction book. This one just wasn't for me. Poppy Fields by Nikki Erlick was such a disappointment for me. I really wanted to love this. I read The Measure by her and absolutely loved that book. It's one of my favorites of all time. I gave that book a 5 stars. Unfortunately, I did give this book a 3 stars, and this one has a 3.72 average on Goodreads. This book has such an amazing concept, and there was so much potential here. It's basically about this controversial center for grief where people can go to sleep away their grief. And that just sounds so interesting, right? Like, I definitely would want to read a book about that. The problem was that this book was very boring, slow, and bland. It's also kind of like a road trip story, which was not what I was expecting going into it. It did still have Nikki Erlick's very strong writing style, though, which I really do enjoy. And she did a similar thing in this book that she did in The Measure, where she included a lot of like articles, interviews, podcast snippets, and that kind of thing, which I do really enjoy. That was probably my favorite part about this. Other than that, there wasn't many redeeming qualities to this book. I think I will still give Nikki Erlick another shot if she comes out with anything in the future, because her books do have these really outlandish, interesting concepts, and that's something that I'm always drawn to. But I probably would say you can skip this one and just read The Measure. Sadly, the next book on this list is a problematic summer romance by Ali Hazelwood. Listen, I am on a journey with Ali Hazelwood right now. I'm trying to read her entire backlist this year, and I was really expecting to love this, especially after I really enjoyed Not in Love, the first book in this little series. This book just didn't do it for me. It is an age gap romance set in Italy during a summer wedding. It sounds like the perfect amalgamation of everything that I would want in a summer read, but unfortunately, this book was incredibly boring to me. The split timelines really didn't work for me. I was not interested in the past timeline really at all. I felt no chemistry between these two main characters, which is obviously not what you want when you're reading a romance novel. I wish that I had loved this, but it just wasn't working for me. And I don't know why, honestly. Everybody else seemed to really like this book. Like, this book was getting a ton of positive reviews when it first came out, but I just didn't feel the love between these two. And that was very disappointing for me. This is where things start to look up a little bit. I really enjoyed the rest of the books that I read this month, starting with Heartless by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in the Chestnut Spring series, and I really enjoyed my time reading this. It definitely had me hooked the entire time. Every time that I picked it up, I was just flying through it. This was such a quick, easy read and very summery. It gave me that little taste of a cowboy romance that I was kind of craving. We do have to talk about the cringe factor with this book, though. I don't think it's fair to just blindly recommend this book without discussing how cringy this book was, okay? And hear me out. There was so many moments, either while inside of Kate's head or just while there was dialogue happening, where I could feel myself physically cringing. I mean, I was getting sick by some of the dialogue in this book. If a man ever looked at me and said some of the things that Kate said in this book, I would literally fly to a new country and never look back. Also, he has a pet name for her. Do you guys want to know what it is? Woman. I hate that. Okay, I hated that. Really did not like that at all. So I did give this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I had to dock it quite a bit for all the cringy dialogue and the weird pet names and such. But I did enjoy this overall, and I can overlook most of that stuff. I kind of forgot about all of that cringe stuff that came with this book. I read the first one, I believe, in 2023, and I hadn't picked up the second one. Now I realize it was probably because I was experiencing a lot of that same cringiness in the first book. I am glad that I read this, though. I think I will continue on with the series because it is a fun, quick little palate cleanser type read. Doesn't require any brain power at all. And I can't help that I do kind of enjoy the cowboy vibes in this. So I will continue on with the Chestnut Springs series, but I'm not going to sit here and say that this is the best book that I've ever read or that it's 5 stars because it is far from it. King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. This was a really fun crime mystery thriller, very action-packed, very gripping. This one has a 4.16 rating on Goodreads, and I give it a 4 stars. We are following a man who has a pretty difficult family situation. He lives away from his family, but after getting word that his father is in a coma at the hospital and his younger brother has gotten tangled up in some really dangerous business with some very bad people, he decides to go back home to see what he can do to help the situation. If you are a fan of Ozark, Breaking Bad, or Power, I think you would really like this book. It felt a lot like I was watching a crime drama on Netflix while I was reading this. S.A. Cosby's writing is just so rich, and the way that he describes the imagery in his books, it makes me feel like I am right there seeing it with my own 2 eyes. I don't know how he does it. He is an incredible and talented writer. I would definitely recommend this book if you are looking for a super fast-paced and gripping read. You guys, I fear that disaster has struck. My microphone died halfway through filming that video and we lost half of the footage. Yeah, so we're just going to continue on as if that didn't just happen. And I apologize for any changes in lighting slash background. My bad, team. My bad. The next book that we're going to talk about is The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. This has a 4.23 average on Goodreads. I gave it a 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book, and Marjan Kamali is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. Definitely an auto-buy author after reading this. This is set in 1950s Tehran, and we are following a young woman named Roya who is just kind of trying to figure herself out. You know, she's making her way through life. She doesn't really know who she is or what she'll become, and it's all set against the political upheaval in Iran, which is obviously a very bleak backdrop for this story, but it added such a rich layer to it. Amidst all of the political upheaval and unrest in Iran, Roya finds solace in a stationery shop in town, and there she meets a boy and they fall in love. This is a very tragic love story. It's not a light, fluffy romance, so I would know that going into it. My only issue with this book was that the pacing was a little bit slow. I definitely found it to be a little dragging at points. But the thing is, Marjan Kamali's writing style is just so easy to sink into. Every time I started listening to this audiobook, I was sucked right back into the story. There's just something about her writing that is so digestible and enjoyable to read. I didn't love this one quite as much as I loved her other work, The Lion Women of Tehran, but I still really enjoyed this, and I would definitely recommend that you check it out. Next up, we have Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaghy. This is a book that has been getting a ridiculous amount of hype all over the internet. I will say, I do think the hype is maybe a little overdone. Going into this, I was expecting kind of a dark, atmospheric literary fiction, and what I got was definitely more of a mystery thriller. So I would definitely know that going in. This book has a 4.18 average on Goodreads, and I gave it a 4 stars. We are following a mysterious woman who washes ashore on this tiny island that is inhabited by this family who is there to protect the island and a seed bank that is located there. The family is very off put by this woman's presence. They don't know who she is, why she's there, and there's kind of this underlying tension that she may have impure motives for being on this island. So that kind of adds to this eerie, thrillery kind of atmosphere and vibe that we got in this book. The island setting of this book was almost a character in and of itself. The setting was so rich and vivid, and that was probably my favorite part about this story. There was also a lot surrounding family in this story and the relationship that the father in this book had with his children. So there was a lot of tender moments as well, which is not something that I necessarily expected going in, but it was something that I really enjoyed and I'm happy was there. This is also just a super short read. I think it's like less than 300 pages, super easy to get through. And if you need a quick read to get your Goodreads goal up, this is the perfect one to do that. As I said earlier, I do think that this book is just the slightest bit overhyped. Everybody that I've seen read this has raved about it and rated it 5 stars. So that's kind of what I was expecting going into it. And that's not necessarily what I got, but I still think this is a fantastic book. And if you lower your expectations just a tad before going into it, I think you'll have a very positive reading experience. We're getting into my top 5 of the month now, so this is very exciting. We have in the number 5 spot, Carl's Doomsday Scenario by Matt Dinniman. This is the second book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. I won't say too much about the plot of this since it is the second book in the series, but what I will say is that this series has really taken me by surprise. I initially did not think that I was going to like this. This is kind of a wacky sci-fi series about this man and his cat who find themselves in this video game style underground dungeon where they have to compete to survive. I know that sounds kind of insane, but trust me, it's really good. I really enjoyed the second installment in this series much more than I even enjoyed the first book. This kind of corrected all of the issues that I had with book 1 and left me definitely very excited to continue on with book 3. Before I read this, I wasn't quite sure if I was going to continue on with the whole series. Now I'm very certain that I will. So I'll be reading about one of these a month. And I do have reviews posted for these over on TikTok. My 4th favorite read of this month was The Compound by Aisling Rawle. This book was just the perfect book for me. It was exactly what I needed. This is the book that I couldn't quite classify with the genre. If you look this up online, it says that this is a young adult dystopian novel. This is definitely not a young adult book, so do not go into it thinking that. It does kind of have those dystopian vibes to it, though. I would also say you might be able to classify this as a sci-fi or a mystery thriller. It's kind of hard to say. This is a book that's for all of the girls who love a weird fiction book, and also anybody that loves Love Island. It's about this Love Island style reality show that has a dark twist. It's kind of like Love Island meets Survivor or something similar to that. It had some very like dark, eerie undertones to it and a lot of commentary on greed, exploitation, and reality TV. So if that is something that sounds interesting to you, I would highly recommend this. This is also Aisling Rawle's debut novel, which is so impressive. I loved this. It was the perfect book for a quick summer read, and I've never read anything quite like it before. So if you want something unique, this is the perfect book for you. We have made it to the top 3, folks, and coming in 3rd place is The Night in the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This book has a 4.37 average on Goodreads right now, and I gave it a 4.5. This was just shy of a 5-star read for me. I really enjoyed this. I find that the premise of this book is a little tricky to explain, but I will try my best. We are following a young woman named Sybil Delling. She is a diviner, one of only 6 in existence in this world, and she basically performs these dreams that serve as premonitions for good or bad omens that help her to read people's futures. One day, the king rolls up to the cathedral with his knights in order to be divined, and that kind of sets this story off. Things start to go downhill from there. Sybil's other fellow diviners start to go missing one by one, and she makes the decision to join the king and his knights to try and find them. The pacing in this was just impeccable. I don't know if I've ever read a story with such perfect pacing. There was always momentum. We were always making progress toward our goals, and there was never a dull moment. There is also a bit of romance in this book, which I really enjoyed. This is a romantasy. It was so refreshing to read a romantasy where the fantasy elements were equally yoked with the romance elements. There was a great balance between the romance and the fantasy. The fantasy in this book was so clearly well thought out, planned, and executed, which was such a breath of fresh air when you read all of these romantasies where it's very clear that the fantasy kind of takes a back seat. In this one, the fantasy is very much at the forefront, which I definitely appreciated. And not only that, it was just so unique as well. And we can't move on without talking about the gargoyle. I mean, best sidekick to ever exist, in my opinion. I absolutely cannot wait for book 2. I am so sat and so ready for whenever that one comes out. And I'm very excited to get into more of Rachel Gillig's work as well. All right, we've made it down to our final 2. And in the second place position, we have Circe by Madeline Miller. This book has a 4.22 average on Goodreads. I originally rated this a 4.5, but I have not been able to get this story and this character out of my head, so I have decided to bump that rating up to a 5. This is just one of those books that has really stuck with me. I have to be honest with you guys, I have had this book in my Audible library for, I kid you not, like 7 years. And I cannot believe it took me this long to listen to it. If you are intimidated by this book and that is why you have not picked it up yet, don't be. That's exactly how I felt. I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to understand this or that it was just going to go above my head. But once I actually started listening to the story, I found that it was very easy to understand and super digestible and just a very immersive experience. The audiobook was also fantastic. Loved the narration. It felt like I was watching like House of the Dragon. You know, in that very first scene of season 1 when there's that voiceover and they are picking the next successor for the Iron Throne. The sound of that narration at the very beginning of House of the Dragon is exactly how I felt like listening to Circe. Something about the narrator's voice was just so soothing, but also so enthralling. We are following Circe, who is a goddess and the daughter of Helios, and she discovers that she has a knack for witchcraft. And this knack for witchcraft eventually leads her to be exiled from her home and sent to this desolate island where she is completely on her own, and she has to learn how to live, survive, and provide for herself with just the elements of the land around her. She also takes this time to really hone in on her witchcraft, and throughout this story, we get to see many of the most famed figures from all of Greek mythology. At the end of the day, this is just a story about an incredible and independent and strong woman, which is something that I always want to read about. I would highly recommend that everybody pick this up. Madeline Miller, queen, okay? She is one of my all-time favorite authors at this point. I am literally begging her to come out with more books. I will read anything that she writes. Her writing is exquisite, and everybody should experience it at least once in their life. I bet you cannot guess what my number 1 book of this month was. Nobody is as shocked as me that it is a 27-page novella. Yeah, Galatea by Madeline Miller is incredible. I don't know how she packed such a punch into so few pages. This story had me just completely enraptured the entire time I was listening to it. I spent an Audible credit on this, you guys, literally for 45 minutes of an audiobook that I listened to at double speed, so it was really only 22 minutes. It was worth every penny, okay? First of all, the audiobook narration, fantastic yet again. Second of all, the story itself, just amazing. This is based on the Greek myth about a man who carved the perfect woman from stone, and then she came to life to be his wife. And it was such a feminist, woman-forward story, which again is something that I love. I won't say too much about this because obviously it's so short, like I don't want to spoil anything, but if you are apprehensive about starting with Greek mythology or Madeline Miller, this is the perfect place to start because it's so short. You can get a good taste for her writing and how you feel about it. And this is such a great gateway into her other books as well. Best short story I have ever read. I will never stop recommending this. I absolutely loved this. So much so that it was my favorite thing that I read this month. So if that doesn't speak highly enough about it, I don't know what will. Everybody should give this book a try. Oh, and after I spent my Audible credit on this, I went ahead and ordered the physical copy as well because I loved it that much. So that should convince you to read this book, if nothing else. And that is everything that I read in the month of July. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far, be sure to like and subscribe. We are trying to build a little community over here, and I would love to have you. Also, let me know what you thought about any of these books if you have read them in the comments down below, and I will see you guys next time.